Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Today, I bring you great news. It's done. Why Buildings Fall Down. I've completed it. I've read it. This boy, I mean, he doesn't look that thick. Maybe he does. I don't know. It's hard to say. But, like, there's some diagrams and stuff. But, dude, towards the end, dude, like, right as I'm dying, it's just text, bruh. It is awful. However, I would like to say, so we discussed built and we discussed engineering in the mind's eye. I do think this is a deeper dive into civil engineering. I'm mechanical, so when I look up books for mechanical engineer graduates, boy, am I surprised with how much civil engineering stuff I'm finding. But I will say this was somewhat nice, but also brutal to get through because it does put things into layman's terms, such as things called redundancy. And, I learned about this with built, but it also brings up the fact that we put concrete around steel. That way, because concrete isn't a good conductor of temperature, but steel is, and that will cause molecules to get excited and bounce around or slow down and become stiffer or whatever. So it does talk about that, but also this isn't just about buildings, it's about planes, it's about bridges, all kinds of stuff, and why they fell down and why they failed. It talked about a plane that flew like over 100 missions and they never really inspected it. It was back in like the 40s or 50s, and it finally just crashed, right? And they're like, what the heck? It never got damaged. And then it's like, dude, there's wear that happens on this. And, we had to learn that the hard way because, you could take a paper clip and literally just go like this, and then eventually it's going to snap. And that's kind of the same thing with like planes. It's like, oh, maybe we should inspect these panels because, if it bows a little bit, elastic deformation soon becomes plastic deformation. They did bring that up in this book. Elastic means it goes back to normal. Plastic means it's permanent and doesn't go back to normal. I knew about that from a manufacturing class that I had, but this book does discuss that as well. It's also interesting to see how people used to learn through their mistakes about things, such as the Tacoma Narrows Bridge. It's so interesting. They tried making a really narrow bridge and using a lot less material, and they kind of were flexing it. They were like, yeah, we didn't use that much material for this. And then the wind got up to 42 miles per hour, and the bridge started literally like having like torsion going clockwise or counterclockwise, just back and forth. And they didn't account they accounted for wind, but not in the way that it happened. They were like, okay, the wind is going to hit the bridge dead on, and the bridge will take it. What they didn't account for is the wind, swooping and causing the bridge to literally torque, which was fun to read about, I guess. And then, like the Leaning Tower of Pisa, it's on the front of the book. I forget when it said it was built, but it was really funny because it was like slowly, leaning over, and engineers were like, well, we don't want this to fall because, it's like what is it? It's like it's a landmark. It is a piece of history. It's something Italy prides itself on, the Leaning Tower of Pisa. But it's funny because a lot of engineers, like modern day engineers, were like, okay, let's try and like fix this and make it not fall. And they tried, and they actually started making it fall faster because they messed with the soil. And then they were like, okay, well, let's rethink this a little bit. And it was closed to the public for a while, and they eventually got some cables underground to keep it up, and it hasn't moved. And this book was written in 91, which, dude, that was like a flashbang. There's 19 chapters in this book, and it mentions that in like chapter 17. That was a mental flashbang when it said this book was like it broke the fourth wall essentially, and was like, yeah, this book is written in 91, and I was like, what? Because it was talking about the future and what things might fall down in the future. Another interesting bit is a lot of things fall down because of neglect and people not really paying attention. There was this one building that fell down because the engineer kind of looked at the drawing and was like, yeah, that looks like a legit design, but he didn't pay attention to the material that was being used and didn't do the full calculations, but he looked at the like basic drawing schematic of the building, the outline, and he was like, yeah, this is legit. And then the building fell within like 3 years. And then there was also just some really interesting things where they tried using these like hook bolts, like they left a little swoop in a I-beam, except it's like this, not like this. When you say I-beam, you typically think this, because of Boeing and stuff, but no, like just this beam, they left like a little hook, and it never they never closed it off. So what happens is there's a party going on like the 4th floor of this building, and that's how it's connected, which is insane, because I think they said it was like an 18-story building, and on the 4th floor there was like this party going on, and one of them fucking snaps, right? And basically, when one of them snapped, deformation, and then the rest of the building couldn't support it, and then it all collapsed, and I think it said like 119 people died. So yeah, if you're interested in like civil engineering stuff, out of the 3 books I've read, one of them I can't even count as civil engineering. Engineering in the Mind's Eye is more mechanical, my pace. But if you had to choose between Why Buildings Fall Down and Built, I would say Built is more lackadaisical in its approach, and this is a lot more professional in its approach. It also goes way more in depth. I also really like the diagrams in this more than the few I get in Built. I don't remember Built having that many, but I really love these diagrams. Oh wait, this was something else. But it's also something similar. So this top page or top illustration is them trying to jack up an I-beam, and they used it was like a lifting rod. In the shear head, they didn't take into account the fact that the concrete might bow, which is a reasonable assumption at first, and well, it bowed, and it caused, I thought this was a dam. No. Oh, it is a dam. Yeah, that was pretty cool. Or no, this dam ended up coming apart because of the foundation, the soil. The engineer didn't take into account the soil that it was being placed on, and thus the dam actually broke off one side and just kind of swung. But the one illustration I showed you just now was not a dam; it was a building. But yeah, it also fell down, which is super cool. Oh yeah, the reason this happened, so when they're lifting up the beams with the shear head, what happened was they weren't doing it evenly, and that caused deflection to take place, both with the shear head and the concrete, and that caused the building to fall down while construction workers were working on it. So that's really cool. But yeah, hopefully this is the last nonfiction book I talk about for like the next 2 months, but I can't make any promises. I got 6 on my shelf right now. I invested in some business ones. I think I have like 2 engineering ones on there. And then my dad did get me, what's his name? Dave Ramsey. I don't know, the guy that says to like invest half of your income into savings, and it's like, dude, I can't do that. But yeah, those are some nonfiction. Hopefully I will be throwing a bunch of other things at you that aren't this. Yeah, and hopefully like 3 months we'll have a review of the Witcher series, the books, that is. But yeah, that's about it, guys. See ya.